Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mr. Campshore, I want to go a little bit different direction. There was a report that came out that said, it's been a few years ago, that there were 77,000 empty or underutilized federal buildings. I know that we're, on the energy side, spending some amount of money to maintain those buildings. Doesn't it make sense, wouldn't it make more sense for us to sell those buildings, get them out of the federal inventory and get them off the books in terms of what we're expending?
I'm not sure I completely understand the question, but I would agree with the premise that buildings that are underutilized can save the most amount by being renovated so that they can be more intensively used. In the building, in GSA's headquarters, for example, we increased the number of people in the building after the modernization of the building by over 40%, and we're avoiding $32 million a year in avoided lease costs by reducing the amount of leasing, moving people into the building. It's also interesting that we studied two buildings, the one I work in here in Washington, D.C., and a building in Denver, Colorado, that have that kind of density. And when you increase the density by 40%, the electrical consumption of the building only goes up by 4%. So it's also an energy efficiency component there. And it's certainly true that the square foot of space that you don't use at all has the greatest savings compared to one that's more efficient.
Right. Well, Mr. Meadows made this point about buildings that are over 50 years old. Here's an article from National Public Radio about empty buildings, and there's one in particular. Now, this is from 2014, so I don't know what has happened with this building, but it's a 132-year-old building that's just 6 blocks from the White House that's sitting empty. And the point I'm trying to make is that if you've got property that's underutilized, you're still paying to keep it heated and cooled. It might make more sense to sell those buildings, let somebody else bear the cost of doing the modernization of the building to reduce the energy footprint, but or rather than the federal government do that. Then you've got this report from the GAO from March of last year on space utilization. I just think that's got to be part of the discussion when we're talking about reducing our overall energy cost. Is better utilization of the properties that we have, and maybe disposal of the properties that we don't need. And I think that needs to be part of the conversation.
I think that's an important thing, sir, and it's also something that GSA is supporting government-wide. In the past several years, if I recall, I may have this statistic a little bit off, we've reduced the overall federal inventory by over 3 million square feet, $3 billion. There is a very active program to reduce the total footprint of the government, and I'd be happy to provide you some more information about that program.
Well, there's a little bit of frustration involved here because the GAO placed the handling of federal buildings on its high-risk list, and it's been on there since 2003. And I think now that we've got this major focus on energy and going to renewables and being more efficient, that now would be a good time to start implementing some of the suggestions that the GAO has made. Obviously, there's some major complications with selling federal property that I think we need to work through. When you're talking about buildings, particularly older buildings, as Mr. Meadows brought up, and he's been a developer. I worked for 2 international engineering companies, so I think it'd be in our best interest if we took a holistic view of this and started looking at property that's underutilized or unoccupied and make some decisions there that would help us reduce our energy footprint. With that, Madam Chairman, I'll yield back.